So I was doing research for another case when I saw this headline. And the headline was something about jilted girl kills fiance in Pact. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. And so I started reading, and it actually was very interesting. So essentially, a young lady killed her fiance um, based on the fact that he did break up with her after he promised that he would stay with her and marry her. And they kind of wrote that promise down in a pact, and she took it seriously and shot him. Hi, I'm Angela Willis. I am a historian and history teacher, and I like to use murder cases to help people better understand history. Oftentimes, the murder cases, once you start analyzing them and what was actually going on, reflect larger problems that are happening in society at the time. In today's episode of Women That Kill, we look at a young girl named Allie who killed her boyfriend, Boyd, after he broke up with her and got engaged to another girl. This case helps us better understand the 1920s. Oftentimes in history books, all we really see of the 1920s is Gilded Age, mafia, alcohol, even though it's banned, and just this party and women cutting their hair, wearing short dresses. The whole flapper era was occurring at this time. But we don't really see what was happening in the day-to-day lives of these small rural towns throughout the United States and what they were really going through. And so today's case helps us better understand 1920s America for the farmers and the people in the small towns who weren't really in the city going through this big event like everyone else was. So before we get started, if you could subscribe to this channel and perhaps like this video if you like it, that would be great. This is a new type of content for me and this channel, and I just want to see how you guys like it. And by subscribing and giving a thumbs up, that will encourage me to continue to make these types of videos. So let's start with the basic information of the people involved. So the young woman who did the killing is named Allie, and she is from a very small town in Arkansas called Lead Hill, Arkansas. And when she was around 19 or so, she started dating this boy, this local man in town who was also a farmer named Boyd. Now, Allie's background is very similar to most of America. Her parents were married. She has older siblings, but her mother did die at some point when she was younger. But she had an older sister, a couple of brothers, and a dad, and she lived out on a farm. And the town that they lived in has about, at the time, 214 people. So we're talking about in 1920s Arkansas, the town had 214 people. Now, when I did a research recently, I was shocked to find that the town only has 274 people as of 2020. So in the last, decades, they've only increased by 50 people. So the town doesn't really attract very many people. It looks like the only people that live there are those that have been there several generations. And when I was trying to figure out why was it like this, it's just a really small town, and there's not really economic opportunity for people to go try to live there. So it's a lack of economic opportunity. Also, there's a lack of diversity. The town is predominantly almost all white Christian. We're talking about 93% of the town is white, and that is of today. And so back in Allie's time, it was probably closer to 100% white Christians that lived there. And it is on the lower social economic situation in the country. The average worker there makes significantly below the national average. So it's a lower income area, predominantly all white and Christian. And this is very important. You might be saying, I don't care about the town. This is going to be very important to the overall story in just a second. You'll kind of see why. So Allie grows up in the small town. She starts dating Boyd. Boyd is 7 years older than her. So he is in his mid-20s when they start dating. And they date for over a year. And here's the weird part. No one seems to have known that they were dating. And this is weird because I grew up in a very small town. Not as small as where Allie grew up, but I grew up in a town that had about 1,500 people. One day I walked into a bank. Well, it was an office building type thing. It had a lot of different things in it. So I walk in there, right? And I'm going to go get my taxes or something done. I walk out. I get a call from my cousin who was like, oh, so you went and did your taxes. Because someone she knew had seen me and told my cousin that I was there getting my taxes done. And this is in a town that is significantly larger than where Allie grew up. And that is to say, when you're in a small town like this, there is nothing secret. You are not just secretly doing anything at all. Everyone knows your business and everyone tells your business. So the very fact that there seems to have been a 15-month relationship between these two and no one knew about it. Not one single person in this town or in her family or in his family knew about this relationship. No one. And that is and that's kind of strange to me. That is very strange to me because it just seems weird right off the bat. And so as I'm getting into this story, I'm like, as I'm reading, I'm like, really? Not one person figured out that these two were together? And it wasn't like they were together just writing letters secretly. About a year into their relationship, Boyd convinces Allie that they should take their relationship to the next level. They should have front hugs in bed. They should consummate their relationship. So that is Boyd's, what Boyd is saying they need to do. They need to front hug. They need to consummate their relationship. Allie is hesitant. Allie is hesitant to do this, but Boyd continues to ask her, and eventually she agrees, and they have relations for the first time. Now, it looks like after this happened, almost immediately after this happened, Boyd kind of realized, she has brothers, she has a dad. If they find out, could not be a good situation for me. So he writes a pact. Now, the pact is actually very long, but the only parts that the newspapers put in and the sources that I put in were just a little snippet. But then as I read the description of what was in it, I was like, okay. So right now I'm going to read to you what was actually put in the newspapers. So what was put in the newspaper about this pact that was written and they both signed after having sex for the first time. We hereby agree that the first one of us that is unfaithful to the other shall meet death at the hands of the other. And then they both signed it. So they both signed this pact that the other will have the opportunity to kill the other person if they try to be unfaithful or leave. So another part of the pact that is referenced, but that wasn't actually put into the newspapers that we could read from, was the second part of that, or perhaps maybe the first part, because I'm sure Boyd wanted to make that the first thing. It said, if Allie told her brothers or father what happened between her and Boyd, Boyd could kill her. So she had to promise to never tell anyone about them having premarital sex. And essentially, from what I get from this whole letter and kind of references that the police were putting in, was that Boyd had also promised to marry her, according to the pact. And so Allie was under the assumption that she and Boyd were engaged to be married after the first time they had sex, and that's what, according to this contract, it said. Now, once again, we have an issue because when the police interviewed her family, her father, her brothers, her sister, the neighbors, anybody about this. No one knew that they were even dating, and certainly no one knew that they were engaged. So there is no evidence that Allie ever got engaged to Boyd. It's just, she was the side chick, it appears, and she didn't realize it. The pact is written, right? They have done the pact. They've done it. And now, I believe it was something like a week, if that they had done this and signed this pact, that Boyd broke up with Allie. Almost in a week, he broke up with this girl. After convincing her to have sex, after promising that he would marry her, he breaks up with her. 2 days later, after breaking up with her, he starts dating her neighbor named Agnes. I kid you not. He starts dating her next door neighbor named Agnes. And it gets worse. It gets even worse than that. Within a week or two of dating Agnes, which he is doing publicly, and everyone in the town knows that he is dating Agnes. Within a week of dating Allie's neighbor, who she knew and who she's probably grown up around, Boyd proposes marriage to Agnes and puts it in the newspaper. He is openly dating her, and now he is engaged to this other girl within weeks of basically, having relations with Allie, promising her, I'm going to marry you. And then he just goes off and gets engaged publicly to someone else. And she has been this secret little side chick relationship. And it was a lot. I was even shocked. In modern times, I was shocked at how quickly he moved to marry Agnes. So it's in the newspaper. Allie finds out about everything, but she doesn't say a word. She never tells her father, we were engaged and he slept with me and he made all these promises. Allie never tells anyone about what happened between her and Boyd or anything. However, this is the kicker. Allie might have been naive about relationships, and she might have been naive about, certainly she was naive about what was going on between her and Boyd, but this girl was not naive about keeping paperwork, because she kept the contract. She kept every single letter that he sent her that references them having relations, and also telling her, you better not say anything. Remember the contract we signed. So he sent her multiple letters in the subsequent time that they had relations to try to warn her, or it even appears like he was even trying to threaten her a little bit to keep her quiet. And Boyd knows this. Boyd knows this girl has everything, and she could ruin his relationship with Agnes. She could ruin his potential wedding, and she could also force Boyd to marry her and not Agnes if she wanted to. So Boyd, at this time, he's 27 and Allie is 21, or she's 21. So Boyd understands this. He understands he has a definite problem with Allie, that Allie is going to cause some type of problems for him, and that he needs to get all the evidence. Because without those letters, without that contract, it is going to be her word against his, and he's probably going to be the one that everyone believes, because no one knew that Allie and Boyd were even together, because it was such a secret. Which, once again, I just don't know. A town that small, how they could keep it a secret for so long, but they did. So Boyd contacts Allie, and he says to her, and this is days before he is to marry Agnes. So his marriage to Agnes is happening fast. So days before he's to marry Agnes, which in reality has probably been like a month, maybe 2 months since he had relations with Allie and promised to marry her. This, it's so messy. It's not even funny. I can just imagine Allie being so hurt. Imagine being in love with someone so much that you would break any values that you have. Break your values, keep it a secret, even though you love him so much. And then just to see him throw you off to the side and go get engaged to your neighbor, which you probably known your whole life. It's just heartbreaking. So, but the letters are out there, and that gives Allie an incredible amount of power over Boyd. So Boyd contacts her and says, Allie, look, can I just have all the letters back, please? Can you just give me the letters? And Allie says yes. Right now, at this point, I think Boyd is the problem. Like, you know that this girl is in love with you. She wanted to marry you. And she calls you for these letters, incriminating letters that could actually, if she gave it to her father, whoever, force this young man to actually marry her. And she says yes with no resistance. She says yes with no resistance. And it appears that Boyd did not comprehend that, oh, maybe it's not going to be that easy. Like, he doesn't comprehend. Like, I would have been on high alert if someone who was madly in love with me had evidence that could force me to marry them or whatever, and I just randomly asked for the letter back, the most powerful thing that they have over me, and they just say yes, I would be a little suspicious, like, oh, like, you're just gonna give me the letters back like that, like nothing? But it doesn't appear that Boyd was suspicious of anything. I think he just assumed that Allie loved him so much and still held emotions for him that she would give him the letters. Or he assumed that, look, no one knew we had a relationship, and certainly no one knows about the intercourse, the front hugs, or whatever you want to call that. So basically her reputation isn't tarnished at all, that she could still get married and pretend like she didn't do that before, or whatever the case could be. It certainly looks like he believed, well, since no one actually knew about our relationship, you are in the clear, you're not going to get a bad reputation or anything, so just give me the letters. I can move on with my life, you can move on with your life. Whatever Boyd was thinking was not the correct thing, because she agreed and they decided on a meeting place. And she said, okay, meet me tomorrow at my sister's home, because she has an older sister who's married who has her own home. And Boyd was like, great. So that night, Allie tells her dad, Dad, I'm going to go spend the night with my sister at my sister's house. I'll come home tomorrow. This seems like it's not an unusual request. And I have an inkling that this might be how Allie was able to have a relationship with Boyd secretly, because it didn't throw the father off, but it wasn't unusual for her to go spend the night at her married sister's home. So Allie packs all the letters that she promises to give to Boyd. She actually packs them all up, puts them in a bag, puts some clothes, and on her way out, without anyone noticing, she picks up her dad's handgun and puts it in the bag with the letters and her clothes. So she goes to her sister's house. She spends the night at her sister's house. And the next day, Boyd comes over. Now, I'm not clear. The newspapers really didn't make it clear. The sources that I was reading about the story didn't really make it clear. I know she and Boyd are at the house 2 times, and I know for sure on one occasion they are alone. But I'm not for sure if they're alone the first time. They might be. So Boyd comes over to the sister's house. There's Allie. They make small talk. And then Boyd asks for the letters, and Allie gives him the letters. And I think Boyd is kind of in shock at this time. He gets the letters, and then he's like, well, she might just want to be friends. It seems like she's not holding any animosity. So Boyd offers to walk Allie back to her father's house, and she agrees. So they're walking, and they get halfway there when suddenly Allie turns around to Boyd and says, take me to my sister's house right now. There was no argument. There was nothing going on at this time. It just was a sudden, take me to my house. Take me back to my sister's house. So Boyd is like, okay. So, and this whole time he now has the letters. He is in possession of the letters. They get back to her sister's home. Her sister is not there. The entire house is empty. So the entire house is empty. Boyd is like, okay, you're here. And Allie, we don't quite know who started the conversation, but the conversation goes into an argument, most likely over the fact that Boyd promised to marry Allie, and now he broke up with her and is engaged to Allie's neighbor. They go into an argument. Boyd is trying to calm Allie down when suddenly she walks across the room, opens up the drawer, pulls out her dad's gun, and turns around. And Boyd, the gist of, he's like, no, put the gun down. Don't do this. Allie shot him one time. It doesn't appear she wanted to kill him because she shot him in the thigh. So she shoots him in the thigh. Boyd is like, oh my God, you shot me. And he, for some reason, drops all the letters. He drops everything and he runs out the door and he goes to the neighbor house. Now, it doesn't appear that he went to Agnes's house. It looks like there was another neighbor. Oh, because they're at their sister, Allie's at her sister's house, not her father's home. So Agnes is neighbors to her father's farm. So they're at her sister's house. Boyd runs out the door, goes to a neighbor's house, gets there. The neighbor calls the doctor. While they're waiting for the doctor, everyone's like, what happened to you? What happened to you, Boyd? What happened? What happened? And Boyd said, Allie shot me. But he doesn't say why. He just says, Allie shot me. So he gives the name of who shot him and everything. But by the time the police have come, Boyd has bled out and died. So Boyd is dead. So then Allie goes to the police station willingly. It does not appear that she put up any resistance, but she was smart. She took with her the letters and everything. So Allie goes to the police station, turns herself in, and the police are asking her, why? Why did you do this? And she tells them the whole story. She tells them everything. She even tells them about the front hugs relationship, how the relationship had moved to another level after, and then he just breaks up with her, and everything she says is backed up by the letters. Well, it's backed up by the contract as well as the subsequent letters he sent her reminding her, you can't tell anyone or I'm going to kill you. So everything she says is in these letters, and it's all proof, and it's written in his hand. It's addressed to her. Everything is here. So the police let Allie go on a $5,000 bond, which I'm just saying, $5,000. This is a small rural community. I believe $5,000 is the equivalent of $85,000 today. But somehow she made bond and got out. And that's where the story ends. I looked everywhere. I looked high and low. I even paid some subscriptions to look at archives of old newspapers, and I could not figure out how this story. This is how I think it ended. In the letters, Boyd and Allie, but you could tell from the handwriting that Boyd is the one that created the contract. Boyd is the one that sent her multiple letters saying, you promised not to tell, and if you dare tell, I will kill you based on our agreement. I think Allie got out of this for a number of reasons. The first reason is Boyd had continuously sent her letters saying, if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill you, in a threatening manner. So she probably did feel threatened. She, number two, felt angry and jilted. But it does appear, because there were so many letters, because the letters were often, they were often referencing things. I'm reading it here. They were referencing death a lot. It just seems like she had a really good case for self-defense and that he was threatening her. And the letters kind of support this. What I found interesting is that she got booked December 1st. Her trial was until January, so it was over. And not the January coming up. It said clearly next January. So she had over a year and a month to prepare for trial. But I honestly think she got off because of how threatening his letters were, just because he was so, trying to keep her a secret and trying to marry someone else, and she was kind of threatening that. Also, one of the other things why I think she got off, and this is something that I saw throughout the story. One of the reasons why I read this story is because I saw the word girl. When I heard the word girl, I was assuming someone under 18. To be honest, I was assuming this newspaper article was talking about someone under 18. So when I saw her age, 21, I was like, I would call someone a young woman, a young lady, but to call her a girl when she is an adult, it just seemed awkward. But as I kept looking through more and more news clippings and stuff of this, I realized, the newspapers were pretty much siding with her, because not one time in any article that I read, I'm even looking at the articles now, not one time did they ever call Boyd, the man, a boy. They never said girl kills boy. They call him fiance. They call him young man. They call him a man. They made her seem like a child, a young child, but they put him in as a man. So you really see in the newspaper accounts of the time period this favoring of Allie and treating her almost like a child. She couldn't control herself narrative, just based on that narrative. And then I do think with this time period, you're looking at 1920s, you're looking at a conservative Christian area, going around sleeping with young girls was just not something you did, especially young girls from a good family. It's not something that was seen as an acceptable thing for a man to do. So with that being said, I think Allie 100% got off. Just to reiterate, he was threatening her. And then you have this situation where you're in a conservative religious area and you treat this young girl badly and you sleep with her and you ruin her reputation. I honestly think that Allie got off for killing Boyd. And you can see from the newspaper coverage that they were already turning Boyd into the bad one. So now we're going to look at the historical importance of Allie's case. One of the things that you will often see, this is not a new situation where a guy jilts a girl like this, but I found interesting is that in most cases, the girl kills herself. This case of Allie this case of the young woman who was jilted actually killing her lover, that one is a little off. That makes this case very rare. Like, you would not believe how many cases I saw of young girls just killing themselves, killing themselves, killing themselves. And so to actually see one actually kill the guy who jilted her was actually a rare thing. So Allie's case is very important for multiple reasons in a historical context. When I teach about the Gilded Age, when I teach, the Roaring Twenties, oftentimes it is taught and students understand it as this is a time where women rebelled against tradition and they started cutting their hair and wearing short skirts and drinking and smoking and going out and dancing. A lot of times with students, as well as adults who don't really know history, don't understand is that mostly happened in the larger cities. You're talking about Chicago, New York. That's what was happening. But in all of these rural small towns, that was not happening. Women were held to traditional roles and traditional standards. And so when Boyd broke that tradition and had sex with Allie outside of marriage, that is a huge deal. That is a huge deal because it reflects that even though you had women rebelling against tradition for large segments of the United States, it was still very traditional. And women stayed in traditional roles. And it was traditionally you did not have sex until you got married type situation. And so it's one of the things we have to be careful of when we're looking back at history to say, oh, in the 1920s, women were breaking traditional roles. They were doing all this stuff. No, perhaps a small number of women in very large cities and perhaps richer women were doing this. But overall, in the 1920s, the United States was very conservative, especially in these small towns. And Allie's case demonstrates that. It demonstrates that with Boyd's letters, you really see the fear of him knowing that he broke traditional roles, of trying to get all evidence back. You see Allie's response to the situation, and you see the lack of punishment. Most cases, especially this that made it to national news, you will see a conclusion because people want the conclusion because newspapers are very important at this time. And when you have such an interesting story, people want the conclusion to that story. And the very fact that there is no conclusion lets me know most likely she was acquitted on all charges. She did have a situation where she was jilted, yes, but it got further than that and it broke tradition and Boyd paid for it with his life. So that is all for today for Women That Killed, this episode covering Allie, the 1920s, and how just because the textbook said women were rebelling against tradition actually only applies to a small percentage. Overall, in the United States, everything was still very traditional, at least for a couple more decades until we hit World War II, and women just have to leave those traditional roles because of war efforts and things like that. So if you like this video, once again, please subscribe, like the video. Also, thank you so much for watching. I am really looking forward to doing more of this type of content. I really enjoy it. It lets me use my history degree. So yeah, don't forget to come back tomorrow for more videos, and thank you for watching. Ciao, everyone. So that is all for today for Women That Killed, this episode covering Allie, the 1920s, and how just because the textbook said women were rebelling against tradition actually only applies to a small percentage. Overall, in the United States, everything was still very traditional, at least for a couple more decades until we hit World War II, and women just have to leave those traditional roles because of war efforts and things like that. So if you like this video, once again, please subscribe, like the video. Also, thank you so much for watching. I am really looking forward to doing more of this type of content. I really enjoy it. It lets me use my history degree. So yeah, don't forget to come back tomorrow for more videos, and thank you for watching. Ciao, everyone.